Hi, Morning Brew listeners. Thank you so much for tuning into another episode of Morning Brew. Today, we're talking about New Year resolutions, specifically why we have New Year resolutions, so much pressure to accomplish much in such a short period of time. So why do we do it? Why do we feel the urge to set these ambitious goals? Well, here to help us unpack New Year resolutions is licensed professional counselor Alexa Huerta from the Pillar organization here in Laredo. She's here to break down the science behind resolutions, share some tips on how to make them stick, and dive into whether they're really worth our time. So get ready for a candid discussion packed with some practical advice and a sprinkle of inspiration. Alexa, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate having you with us.
No, thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Absolutely. And first and foremost, Happy New Year to yourself and all of your colleagues over at Pillar. We appreciate everything they do for our community, and thank you for coming in today.
Definitely. No, Happy New Year. It's such an important conversation to start having, right? The idea of why, we wait into the new year to do these resolutions, and are they even helpful? So I'm very excited to be here. But really, when it comes to resolutions, they're goals, right, that we set for ourselves. And really, it's when we think about the new year, it's like a blank slate, right, that we have for 2025 is a whole new year, 12 months where we could do what we want to do, right, accomplish what we want to accomplish.
And we feel like we have so much time to do these, but I can't help but start off by just telling you how much pressure there is when people come up to you, at the start of the year, and they're like, oh, what are your New Year's resolutions? And you just feel so much pressure to answer in, some prophetic way. Well, I'm going to do this. I'm going to, accomplish the world. And when reality, there's so many people that you're just living day to day, just,
Definitely.
So why do we do these things?
It's really just this idea, right, that we have to start everything on a Monday, right? A brand new week. We start on a Monday. It's a brand new year, right? So it's this idea that society has instilled in us, I believe, for so many years through social media, right? Through these practices that once the clock strikes midnight, it's like whatever happened in 2024, the past year does not exist, right? And 2025 gives this new idea for us to start again, right? And I think as humans, we always strive to, do better, be better, and not to put ourselves down and just say, okay, we have one more chance to do this. And that's what the new year brings for a lot of people. It's a new chance to accomplish what they want to accomplish and they didn't have the chance to do the year before.
Right. I've been talking to so many of my colleagues here, and they say that, for some reason, they're just feeling like there's a slump right now. Here we are, a few weeks into January, and they're already feeling like they've just, failed miserably.
Yeah, and that's the pressure that it comes, that it has to be this all or nothing mindset.
On day one.
On day one,
Yeah.
I have to eat this food, I have to do this exercise, I have
Go
to
to the gym.
Exactly, yeah. And that's where I encourage, typically when I work with clients, to kind of create your own narrative, right? Create your own idea. Okay, what is realistic for you, right? Not for your colleague, not for your partner, your friends. It's what works for you. And it is tough because we compare ourselves to social media, what the influencer is doing, what we see, or el tío, right? What they're doing. And so it is tough that we have this all or nothing mindset come in the new year, that when it comes to resolutions, we have to accomplish everything by a certain time frame. If not, it failed, and
right.
You failed.
And that's not true. I mean, I can't stop but, just saying that we don't have to succumb to the pressure of telling people that we're going to accomplish, the world, and we're going to 100 pounds, and we're gonna, pay off all our credit cards, and yet we feel like, like people are watching us.
Yeah, and there's no harm in wishful thinking, right? Let's strive for that. Let's strive for paying off our credit card debt. Let's strive for traveling the world. But when we really have to take a step back, and that's what I do encourage a lot when it comes to resolutions, is take a step back and see what works for you. And sometimes saying those goals that we have in mind are typically because what we hear, right? What everyone's doing. But really ask yourself, okay, what works for Mindy Caso, right? What would work for you in this year? What's in your control? What's in your power, right? And that's when you really start seeing resolutions or these goals, right? More into like visions, right? Or manifestations, some would say. And really say, okay, what does my 2025 look like? What can I accomplish? And really take that step back and see what works for you.
You know, I know you and we've talked about this before as far as how to go about doing that, you know, step by step, because you're absolutely right. I mean, we all want to accomplish more. You know, it's just human. We want to be better. We want to do more. When you say it at the beginning of the year, and you know, there's a lot of times you just don't know how to start.
Definitely.
You know, so I want to kind of dive into once we are determined to you know, have some goals, whether we call them New Year's resolutions or whether we just call them goals for this year. You know, there's got to be a step-by-step process on how we can accomplish this. So I want to kind of talk about that, but I want to dive into that right after taking a quick break. We got to hear from our sponsors, and thank you to our sponsors for sponsoring Morning Brew. We're just going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. We're going to continue our conversation with Alexa on setting goals for the new year. Stay with us.
Why pay a monthly fee? Free checking at IBC.
Welcome back, everyone, to this episode of Morning Brew. We really appreciate that you've stuck around with us. Brew, of course, is a podcast that we started up here at KGNS, the television station that I work for. For those of you who are listening and are not from Laredo, we are in Laredo, Texas. We are a border community along the Texas-Mexican border. So thank you so much for tuning in. And today we're talking about New Year's resolutions. But, you know, New Year's resolutions for me have always just been, you know, kind of, I feel the pressure when folks come up and ask, so it's the new year, Mindy, what are you going to do this year? What are you going to accomplish? What are your resolutions? And I always just go blank. I never know what to say. I feel like the people are wanting me to say something that is just huge and I'm going to accomplish this and that. But really and truly, I have goals all the time. I've got little tiny goals that I kind of strive to achieve. So I brought on the show today, Alexa. She's a licensed professional counselor. She's from the Pillar organization here in town, and she is an expert on how we can go about setting goals for ourselves without feeling so much pressure on having to do everything in such a short period of time. So Alexa, thank you so much for sticking around and helping us get through this whole New Year's resolution, predicament that some of us find ourselves in. Okay, so like I was mentioning, Alexa, you know, we do have goals. Everyone has goals. You want to do better, be better, have a better year 2025 than you did in 2024 if 2024 wasn't as good of a year for some folks. So how can we go ahead and set realistic goals without feeling so much pressure?
Definitely. That's the key word, realistic, right? And sometimes it is taking that step back, right? And not focusing on your neighbor, on your family member, on your friend, your colleague, just really focus on yourself and really sit and reflect on 2024. And the highs and the lows, right? And so typically the lows give us that tone of what we want to change for the upcoming year. The biggest one, I think the best example is losing weight. That's something that everyone usually typically strives for, right? And so what they start doing is, I want to lose weight. And so I want to do all these diets, all these exercise, but they don't take into account their day-to-day living, right? The first couple of weeks of the new year, it's exciting, fresh, but then you get back into your routine, right? The day-to-day hustle and bustle, right? And so then you're like, oh, this isn't actually feasible for me. And so there's where I really encourage anyone that wants to set new resolutions or goals for the year is take a step back and be realistic with yourself. What can you do, right? And so it goes back to that all or nothing mindset. And so typically what I tell people is, doesn't mean that you have to be perfect right away, but ask yourself, what can you add into your life instead of removing, right?
Okay.
So using the idea of losing weight, right? We typically go for the most obvious one is like no more chips, right? No more fast food.
Cut the sweets out.
Exactly, yeah.
No more sugar.
Exactly. But if you're being honest, okay, is that feasible for some people, right? And typically the answer is no, right? In a picture perfect world, we want to say yes, but the answer is no, and that's okay. So instead of thinking this year I'm gonna cut out sweets, I would encourage them to say this year I'm gonna add more fruit, right? Still keeping the sweets an option, but then we're adding something more into your day-to-day life that makes it more attainable for you.
Okay, so I like that concept because we're not going cold turkey and giving up on something. So, you know, and if I'm hearing you correctly, Alexa, if I use another analogy on don't give everything up, but add something, for those who might have the New Year's resolution of not spending as much money, maybe perhaps, okay, open up another account and make it a savings account. So maybe add a little bit more to the savings account and maybe, you know, draw back a little bit on your spending.
Yeah, definitely. It could also be like, okay, if I spend so much money on coffee, right? Let me, you know, maybe up my espresso machine at home or my barista skills at home.
Right.
Little tweaks here and there that you could do to really make it, again, attainable, right? And so that goes in all aspects, right? Of like whatever your goal is. Is it to travel? Is it to spend time with family, etc., right? And so once you really, again, reflect and kind of see what exactly you want to add to your life in this new year, that's where it goes into the personality, right? The person, what they want to do with that. So some people could be lists, right? They do a little to-do list, right? Like this month I'll do X, Y, Z to attain that goal by December, save this much money. Or it could be a vision board, which is where I personally do encourage a lot of people because we are visual learners for the most part.
Right. I'm not familiar with a vision board, but I've heard that term a lot. So kind of walk us through what a vision board is and how does that help us manifest, if I can use that word, what our overall goals are?
Yeah, so a vision board is pretty much just, it could be a piece of paper, it could be a cardboard, it could be a PowerPoint, any kind of, you know, format. Just you need a blank slate, right? And with this blank slate, with your goals in mind, right, you'll put pictures, right? So it could be like if your goal is to go to Cancun, then you'll put a picture of Cancun, right? Or if your picture is to spend more time with family, picture of your family, hanging out with friends, whatever images you could find that represent what your goals mean to you, right? And once you have that, all those pictures, you paste them, a collage, right, if you will, all over this board, and then you put it up somewhere. It could be in your bathroom, in your room, on your phone, or your wallpaper, somewhere where you could see it daily, if not or often. And so the idea here is that the more you see it, the more your brain will then accept or like kind of like use it more as it be like in the back of your mind, right? So now in your day-to-day, you'll have that, you know, to kind of like remind you like, oh, I'm gonna buy coffee, but I'm saving money, so maybe I shouldn't. Or I think I do all those tweaks day to day to kind of keep you in line with your goals.
You know, I kind of like that because let's say the goal is to travel more and you put on the wallpaper on your phone, like you said, the Cancun or any place you're wanting to go. And then every time you pick up your phone and you want to shop and buy something, you'll see that wallpaper and remind yourself, no, Mindy, let's not shop because this is your overall goal right there staring at you in your face on your phone. You're wanting to do this regardless of what it is, but make that your vision board so that, you know, you can just remind yourself that this is what you want to do or accomplish for the year.
Yeah, exactly. And I always like to remind people it doesn't have to be actual goals like physical goals, right? Of like going somewhere, saving something. It could actually just be like mindset goals, right? You could put quotes that you want to be more aligned with, right? So if you're trying to work on your positivity, right, day to day, you could always put a quote that good things are coming or something that's true to you, that you feel some type of security with or connection with. And that way every day you also remind yourself of that quote, right? That everything's going to be okay or you got this type of manifestation.
Right. You know, and And mental health, of course, you being with the Pillar organization is so important. And that should be a goal for the new year. Work on your mental health and work on, just becoming the person that you aspire to become, and
Definitely.
that's a very good way of reminding yourself, putting it on your phone or making a vision board like that.
And it really just goes back to the person, right? Whatever they are, again, whatever feels more true to you, right? There's so many different ways. People journal about it instead. People write to-do lists. They do vision boards. It really, like I said, whatever works for you, and that's the most important to make it more attainable, has to be aligned with you and your values and what goes back, what works for you. Because if you do something that works for Mindy, it might not work for me, right? And then that's where we typically fall into the all or nothing mindset. But no, definitely something that for people to just find their way, add their spin to it, right? The creativity to really make it their goals, right, for their year.
We were talking prior to the podcast, and you were mentioning not necessarily when it goes back to New Year's resolutions, as opposed to doing these 12 months. In the 12 months, I am going to accomplish this. That perhaps it should be resolutions, mini resolutions, quarter resolutions, or a couple of weeks resolutions, and that would make these, attainable goals much more realistic and manageable if you're doing them in smaller time periods.
Definitely. It's always say don't bite off more than you could chew, right? And so when we think of resolutions, we always think it has to be accomplished by the end of the year, which essentially, it could be the end of the year, but sometimes that's too big for us. It's too much. It's too far along. I'll get it next month, right? We have that idea. But instead of, I always like to break it up by month. Like, what's your goal for January, right? And accomplish that. What's your goal for February, and etc. And really, if you start seeing it by smaller pieces, it's more attainable and more realistic. That's the thing, right? We could, that's the key, right? To make it, to meet your resolution, to meet your goals, to make it work for you, not you work for them, if that makes sense.
Right.
So definitely thinking shorter, right? Quarter, monthly, weekly, daily, whatever it is, right? That works for you. But as long as you keep working towards that, eventually you will accomplish it.
And I think that if you look at accomplishing smaller goals in a smaller period of time, you won't feel so let down when you don't accomplish what you're wanting to accomplish over this huge period of time. If you perhaps say, okay, I'd like to just lose 1 pound in 2 weeks, and then you do it, then you're feeling inspired to continue, as opposed to you saying, I'm gonna lose 30 pounds, this month, or
Definitely.
and then you don't lose 30 pounds and you're already feeling like a big loser because you weren't able to meet your goal.
Yeah, so it goes back to what's attainable, what works for you, and again, seeing it for what you're true, like be honest with yourself. And that's sometimes the toughest part is being honest with ourselves of what can we accomplish this year without thinking, oh, it's because my cousin did this or my friend does this. No, like block out the outside noise. And really, this is something so personal and so vulnerable, right? To really sit down and think, what can I do better than last year? And what do I want to accomplish? And what do I want to aspire to be, right? And work towards that person or that action, whatever it may look like for that person. But really do sit and really, really, truly make it more about you and what you truly is important to you.
Yeah, very good advice there, Alexa. I appreciate hearing that. I needed to hear that. Well, we're going to take another quick break. We've got to hear from our fabulous sponsors, and thank you so much for our sponsors for sponsoring Morning Brew. But when we come back, we are going to continue our conversation with Alexa, and we're going to put a plan in action on how we can accomplish our goals. So stay with us. We'll be right back after a quick break. Welcome back, everyone, to this episode of Morning Brew. We are talking about New Year's resolutions, and we've been joined by Alexa Huerta. She's been with us over the last few minutes or so, more than a few minutes or so, trying to unpack it all for us and help us determine how to set New Year's resolutions in a way that are actually realistic and relatable to us. But Alexa, thank you so much for sticking around with us. We appreciate it. I want to talk a little bit about how to get started. You know, I'm going to take, for example, the resolution that you shared with us. That was your resolution. You wanted to travel. That's very general. You want to travel. We have to bring it down to actually make it happen. And for a lot of us, like, you know, we hear a lot of resolutions. I want to pay off all my credit cards. I want to lose weight, of course. The resolutions are said in very general terms, but they really need to be more, you know, compacted or more step by step. So how do we go about doing that?
Definitely. So really it goes about, okay, so you set the resolution, you have the vision board done, the journal done, you have your goals on paper in front of you. Now what's next, right? And so really take it goal by goal and really say, okay, what can I work on in this week or in these next 2 weeks? So in the example that I shared was traveling, right? That is my goal for 2025, is to travel the world more, the United States. And so I decided to do it by quarter, right? So each quarter I want a trip. It doesn't have to be a big trip. It could be a small trip. I do want to explore more of the world, right? And so in my vision board, I have different places I want to go to. An example is Washington, D.C. And so I really said, quarter one, I'm going to go to Washington to see the cherry blossom. So I put a photo of that there. And now the next question is, okay, when do I get started? How to do it?
How to get started,
Yeah, and typically it could go different ways. I personally think if you do it with like a buddy, right? A friend, a partner, a family member, you have more of a chance to actually accomplish it with like the buddy system, right? That you push each other to accomplish it. So me and my best friend both say want to do Washington. So we said, okay, let's do it. We got together, let's save a bit of money, and then let's start planning little by little, right? But it really is just getting down to the bits, okay, what is realistic for you? So in these first 2 weeks of the year, what realistically was I could just buy my plane ticket. And so I did it, right? Now the next goal is, okay, hotel. And so I'll wait another 2 weeks for my other paycheck to come in. And so you just plan like that, little by little, you hit those to-do list goals, right? And then by the time you know it, you're in Washington or you're in Cancun, wherever that may be.
Right.
But the idea is just to get started and not wait for it to be perfect or the perfect time. Because really it depends on you, right? You have that power to determine, this is the month I'm gonna do XYZ because it works for me and I could do it.
Yeah, I think you have a very good point there as far as seeing it as this big, huge, it is a big, huge endeavor, your goals are, but to break it down into little pieces. I have this one goal this year that I want to declutter this room that I have at the house that is very overwhelming for me. It is a room that has been the room where me and my kids did all of our projects, every science fair project, everything that was assigned to them from kinder through their high school years happened in this room. So you can imagine how packed this room is with arts and crafts and bulletin boards and just all kinds of stuff that just needs to go. And it's very overwhelming for me. So looking at what you are telling us right now, take it a little bit at a time. Like maybe every couple of weeks I can focus on one section of the room or maybe do this little file or this little area as opposed to seeing this room that is so overwhelming for me. But there's so much potential for this room. It's just a matter of getting it done.
It's the hardest to get started, right? But that's really the hardest part, is to take that first step, right? And truly the first step is, okay, that's your goal. You already have it. You've decided that's gonna be accomplished. Now it's on you to say, okay, when am I gonna do it, right? How do I get started? What works for you? And so if doing room by, like section by section is easier and more attainable, then by all means do it, because it's never gonna be perfect. It can't, and when we remove ourselves from that all or nothing mindset and really truly see if it works for you, by the time you know it, by March, that room will probably be perfectly new, right?
And hopefully turn it into something else. Maybe an exercise room or something.
And the next goal comes in.
Exactly. But wow, you know, you walk into, you know, your goals and you just think, this is what I want, but you know, how do you break it down to make it happen?
Yeah, and it really is just once you decide that you want to make it happen, really now look at it and remind yourself every day of it, or every, going back to like doing it in a way where you could it's real for you, it's meaningful for you. Don't just make a goal just to make a goal, right? Have it connect with you, because sometimes we just say goals just to be part of the crowd, right? Like, I also want to lose weight, but is it truly what you want to do? Because if it isn't, then you're just wasting your precious time and energy, mental energy, on doing something that isn't really important to you or means anything to you, right?
Yeah.
So if we're connected to our goals, if it's aligned with our values and what really does want to makes us a better person, or whatever type of person we want to be, then more than likely we will accomplish them. But that really is like the tough part, to sit and ask yourself what truly does matter to you.
Yeah, I think you bring up a very important point there, as far as not going with what everybody else expects you to have as a goal. I think everyone expects you to say, I'm going to be healthier, I'm going to lose weight, I'm going to go to the gym 5 days a week. But in reality, if that's not what you truly even want or makes you happy, then why go with it?
Yeah.
And maybe you can just be honest with that person and just say, you know what, I've got these goals that are just a little bit more focused on my house, or
my career.
Exactly.
It doesn't always have to be what everyone's saying. And if it is the health, it could be health, but it doesn't have to be, I want to exercise more. It could just be, I want to go on a walk, right?
True.
Or I want to eat more vegetables. It goes back, add to your life instead of removing, because everything, it's all balance. It's a balancing game. And so as long as, you're still hitting those little goals, right? Of just like, I say healthy, right? Eating more vegetables, taking a little bit more walks, drinking more water. You don't have to remove the McDonald's runs or like the pizza night with your family, right?
And that goes back with what you said. I mean, if those are things that you truly enjoy, don't give them up, because life is very short, and we need to be able to enjoy things. I love coffee, and I like coffee with regular sugar. Do not give me any kind of diet sugar at all. Don't give me Diet Cokes. I like the regular stuff. However, I can try to walk a little bit more, or do something that will add something, exactly like what you said at the beginning when we began our conversation. Add something that will maybe balance out some of the stuff that I do enjoy doing, that gives me pleasure to do.
Definitely. And we have to enjoy our goals. We have to enjoy the journey, right? Because if we keep saying like, oh, it's such a hard thing to lose 10 pounds in a month, well, of course it is. Doesn't make it enjoyable. So we have to really, if we enjoy our goals, if it's connected to what we want, I want to come back here in December to ask everybody if they met their goals, because truly it does make you happier when it's more aligned with you.
Right. And I love what you said about just working towards those goals, but making them in smaller little bites. And by the end of the year, you should be able to hopefully have accomplished something. And if you don't, it's okay, because you've got the next year to continue.
Exactly.
No pressure. That's what we're talking about. No pressure goals. I love that. And I think that is going to be our New Year's resolution. It's going to be called No Pressure Goals. But of course, we're going to work on doing the things that make us happy.
I do love that. No pressure goals. That does feel inspiring.
It does. Well, to that, cheers, Alexa. I think that is what our New Year's resolution is going to be for 2025. Well, thank you so much for coming on Morning Brew. We appreciate having you with us, and we look forward to hopefully sitting down with you in 2025 so we can talk about more inspirational conversations.
Definitely. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And that does it for this issue of Morning Brew, this episode of Morning Brew. Thank you so much for spending the last 30 minutes with us. We appreciate having you with us. Until next week, enjoy the brew.